In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top 10 favorite film photos I've taken in 2024. So the first one is kind of a happy accident. I was doing my weekly routine of going to Bagel Pub and Motherland Coffee, both in Brooklyn. I would always go there every weekend, and then I would either take my bike or rent a city bike and bike over to Cobble Hill or somewhere near Carroll Gardens, or bike around Prospect Park. And I had my point and shoot camera with me, and I took a picture of my coffee and bagel together. And then somehow when I went to Cobble Hill Park, I took a picture of like sitting in the park, this little pathway, and somehow these images got double exposed. So they got, it was like taken right on top of the same negative. And it was just crazy because I love how it happened, because it's like my two favorite things were sitting in the park and after a bike ride, and also having coffee and a bagel on my weekend. So I think that kind of sums up like my favorite thing of Brooklyn, and it's cool to have it all in one photo. This year I moved out of Brooklyn and back to my home city in the Midwest. And so throughout the year, I was taking pictures in all my favorite places in New York. And so one of them was Central Park. This was actually taken with my sister who was visiting. And this was just such a picture perfect moment. There's so many photographable moments and places along the way in Central Park, but with the boat and the obnoxiously tall buildings peeking out, it just was like kind of the perfect picture to capture. Another favorite place is near the Brooklyn Bridge Park. Brooklyn Bridge Promenade, I believe is called. And so it overlooks into Manhattan, and it's a beautiful view. And this particular day, it was a spring day, the leaves were just coming out, and it was a gorgeous sunset. You can see like how golden the brick building is and how it's just illuminating, like softly illuminating the city, and then like kind of just shedding its light on the streets as you like come up to the edge of the promenade. So I remember having just like a Brooklyn day where I would go to Williamsburg and then bike or take the ferry to Dumbo and just walk around Brooklyn Heights. It was such a beautiful neighborhood. It was like one of my favorites. And this was just such a fun capture of the light. So all summer long, I was trying to get a good bike portrait. I never thought I would be this person where I was obsessed with my bike, but I loved to bike so much around Brooklyn. And sometimes it was a little scary, especially crossing from Clinton Hill area where I lived through downtown Brooklyn into like either Prospect Park or Cobble Hill, Brooklyn Heights, like kind of that area. You always had to get through downtown Brooklyn, and that was always like so scary. But this was taken at the Brooklyn Promenade again, and it was just a beautiful day and a beautiful ride. And I was like, okay, this is like, what's more iconic than the whole city in the background with my bike, which was made by the Brooklyn Bike Company. And surprisingly, I haven't seen that many of these bikes. You know, when you buy like a car, you see that type of car everywhere. I didn't feel like I saw this bike that much, but I am obsessed with it. I moved it with me when I moved to the Midwest, and it just will always be like one of my favorite things about like experiencing Brooklyn on a bike. It's like the most underrated thing ever. This is a picture of mini donuts from the Minnesota State Fair. It's such an iconic fair. It's such a good time. It's like something many Minnesotans do every year. And this was of my niece, and she was holding the donuts, and I thought it'd be fun to take a few snapshots of like bits of the fair and stuff. It was a really busy day, as it usually is. And so, but with this direct sunlight, I thought it was just such a gorgeous, like poppy, like photo to take with the colors of like the bench in the background and like this like vintage looking logo of the bag, and she's always looking so cute. So and she doesn't like her photo taken anymore, so I'm like, no, it's just of the donuts. This is the only way I could get her to pose for me. So this was just like a taste of summer that I thought it would be fun to document. So this photo isn't like the best picture ever, just because it's a little fuzzy, it's a little out of focus, but this was taken in Oaxaca, Mexico, and I have a lot of photos that are very colorful, and as is this, but I think this really captured how I felt about being in Oaxaca. It was just so fun to explore, where you'd peek through like all these doorways and you couldn't really tell from the exterior what was beyond, but anywhere you went into, whether it was like a museum or a restaurant, it would be like just like another world on the inside. And it was just like someplace I've never experienced before. And so this was a moment where I walked by a doorway and saw this like pop of coral color, which is like my favorite color. And I thought it would be so fun to capture this. So I wish it was a little more in focus, but I still love it. So this photo is of my sister, and it's more of like a sentimental, special photo. It was taken in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, and it was when she visited me before I moved. And so we had discovered through family records that our grandfather's mother was buried in the cemetery, and we looked so hard for her grave, and we knew the coordinates of where it should be, but it was really kind of sad because many gravestones were so eroded that you couldn't even see. Like we could have even seen it and been at her exact gravesite, but we just couldn't know for sure. And so it was a really special thing to do together, since it was our family history, and it was a really beautiful cemetery too, and one that I had walked through many times, like during COVID, during times of unemployment. And so it was like, had my own personal history to it as well. But yeah, it was just a really cool moment. We could like honor our grandmother as well, since she moved to New York many years ago. Okay, coming up to my almost favorite photos. So this one I took on my way to work. I used to work in Herald Square at a law firm. And like I said, as I was moving out of the city, I was trying to capture, I'm gonna cry. I was trying to capture my favorite things, what New York meant to me. And Bryant Park was always like that touchstone for me, and that like city square for me, where when I first moved to the city 10 years ago, I had worked at an architecture firm that was like 2 blocks away from here on 38th and 6th Street. Coincidentally, as I was like the year or two before, I was looking for a neurologist, and their office was in this exact same building as the one that I worked in. The architecture firm was gone, but they were pretty much like on a similar floor, if not the same one. And it was just such a full circle moment. And but Bryant Park has always been such a special place, whether I've met a friend to like go dancing in the park, or watch a movie in the park, or hang out with coworkers after a shift at the coffee shop, or I would always bring a friend there who's visiting, because it was so beautiful in the morning. And also, before the workday starts for New Yorkers, there is such like a specific energy, but like a lull that that starts the day for people. And Bryant Park, again, it was always like on the way to multiple places that I'd worked in the city, and so I would definitely make a plan to either get coffee at Joe's Coffee or Blue Bottle, which was right on the street, and just take like even 5 minutes to sit and watch the sunrise and see like how like the soft light just like kind of grazed the trees and like illuminated the flowers and the bushes, especially in the spring and summer. And it was just like, is so special. I feel like this photo really, really captured it so well, of like how dreamy it feels. It'll always be so dreamy in my mind, and be such a special memory. Lastly, I wasn't sure if I was gonna put this one in here, but I would say this is like my favorite self-portrait I've ever taken of myself, especially on film. It's so hard to take self-portraits on film and make it look so good, but I just was so happy with like how the framing came out, the pose, the light, and I like that my face was a little bit out of focus. I do wish it was like a little bit like back, but also I was taking pictures that day of my plant collection, and it just was like such a snapshot of my life at that time. My roommate had just moved out, and I think maybe in this moment and in this time I was like really considering my future, and like thinking like, what is next for me, and like where do I go from here, because I had just been at so many crossroads along the way ever since really the pandemic. I think this might have been around the time where I was like really sure that I was going to move out of Brooklyn, and that was a really hard time and a really hard decision to make. And but I really love this photo, and it, again, a snapshot in time, and I like to take self-portraits of myself as the years go by, and I'm just really happy with how this one turned out. This photo was taken in Seattle, and it was like the very first day that I was there, and the sun was just gorgeous. And I know that I got very lucky visiting in August, because it's not always the best weather. In fact, it's more common to be cloudy and rainy. And I just love this image because I love peeking through like glass and photographing reflections and streaming light and just like different colors and textures. So this one was just like a fun photo. I think it was taken in Capitol Hill, I want to say. And it also kind of speaks to how I felt like the city was. It felt like it was a city that used to be like really thriving and used to have like kind of a heyday, and now it's like not at its best. I still loved it, had a good time, and learned a lot of history, but I also felt like it was kind of in recovery, at least with the homeless population and things like that. But yeah, that was like one of my favorites of the year. So those were my favorite photos of 2024. Let me know what you think. Have you been to Oaxaca, Mexico? Have you been to Seattle? Have you been to New York? What do you think of Brooklyn? Do you also like to take film photos? And do you also take self-portraits? I'm super curious if there's other creators out there who kind of take in the world in a similar way. So let me know, and I hope you enjoyed.